My name is Trevor Gordon. I'm a Canadian content creator. I have a podcast called Genuine Enthusiasm. Sometimes I post clips of that here on TikTok and on Instagram Live. You can see all that on my bio. Oh, and thank you for the kindness about shouting out my eyes, Patricia. So, during Taylor Swift Eras tour, I got to get to know someone named Dan Shapiro. And I did a little digging. Dan Shapiro is based in Pennsylvania. He works in corporate IT, doing enterprise collaboration software management, enterprise search, and AI. All that to say, he is a Taylor Swift fan. And we're gonna be chatting with Dan, and I have some questions lined up for Dan. But how I discovered Dan is when I was sort of doing research on, hey, how can I get Taylor Swift tickets? Obviously you go on Ticketmaster, but he might have some tricks. He might whatever. And I was starting to go through my TikTok For You page, and I kept seeing this Dan guy, and he was showing such fandom, such support for Taylor Swift fans. He was getting broadcasts of 5,000 people watching his lives, and he was doing his best answering all these questions. I get lives of 500 people watching. He was getting way more. I have trouble keeping up with 100 people writing questions. He was having 500 to 1,000, if not more, people watching his lives, and he was like answering question, non-stop. So I'm excited to interview Dan. So let's just bring him on. Gotta get your camera going. We gotta get your beautiful face on here.
I think we're good. All right, there we go.
All right. So, Dan, now that we have you lined up, Dan, you're based in Pennsylvania. You work in corporate IT, doing enterprise collaboration, software management, enterprise search, and AI. So
No, but there's all kinds of Taylor Swift fans, right? I mean, we come in every make and model. I had a couple of videos that went viral, like where I said crying like a Kelsey, which kind of became like a catchphrase. But in that video, I sort of talked about how I didn't fit the demographic, right? And I wasn't like your typical Taylor Swift fan. And there is no typical Taylor Swift fan, right? You had people in the comments talking about how they were, some 70-year-old biker who was into Metallica and they're a Taylor Swift fan. And yeah, so I think there's all kinds of Taylor Swift fans. And I've been a fan of hers since debut. So, I think it's gotten more for me, and that over the last couple of years, that all of like the energy around the Eras tour itself, right, has just been phenomenal. So I think it's really made for Swiftie. I would just say like I've been a Swiftie, but now I'm like a capital letter Swiftie. So.
All right, Dan, I'm saying this with love, but we got to slow you down because you're answering like 5 of my down a little bit in the sense that, well, I want us to rewind a little bit in the sense of you and TikTok. Like, yeah. We're going to rewind you a bit. Like, what was your purpose to where we are now?
Would you be surprised to hear the answer was to win Taylor Swift tickets? Was actually the initial reason why I went. So last year, they were doing a giveaway for an entire suite worth of tickets for LA Night 4, and I had been, trying to get tickets, as you can guess, since the beginning of the tour. And my sister-in-law sent me a link and said, hey, you and Nora should do this, because before I was doing TikTok, I did other like social media stuff, usually with my daughter for Girl Scout cookies. We enter this, and they're giving away like 10 pairs of tickets. So it wasn't like some tiny giveaway. It was like a decently substantial giveaway. So yeah, so the first video I ever put on TikTok was Nora and I doing a contest essentially to try and win Taylor. We did not win. We had a good video. The brand even commented on our video and said, "Oh, this is a masterpiece. This is so good." And like I thought we had a legit chance because there was only like a couple hundred entries in this contest. It wasn't like there was maybe a couple hundred entries and there was 10 pairs of tickets giving away. So I was like, wow, this is way better chances than the usual lottery. We didn't win. We didn't get to go to that concert. But that was my first foray into being a TikTok content creator.
So then I guess from that, how did it evolve to the point that you as a fan were trying to get tickets to the point that you became an unofficial / official source of the logistics of getting tickets, or at least advice on getting tickets.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was a bit of a journey. I guess, after I did that video, I didn't really post much for a while. And then during Girl Scout cookie season, I posted a bunch of Girl Scout stuff. And as cookie season was ending, that was right when we were getting into kind of like the pre-release hype of Tortured Poets. It was like March, right? So before the album came out in April. And my kids were like, "Oh, Dad, we're having fun doing TikTok. Maybe we should keep doing stuff." And I said, "Well, fine, we'll do something." And I challenged myself. I said, every single day, I'm going to post a video. And I just did like literally like a Taylor song rating filter. And if you go back at the beginning of my channel, you'll see like 30 days in a row of me just posting song rating filters and like almost nothing else. Most of them only got a couple hundred views, but like in a way I felt like I was practicing, because I was kind of wanted to understand like, what is this technology? How does it work? So in a way I was like kind of learning how to sort of do this and seeing if I enjoyed it. But I did. And I posted some stuff about like, local politics, which I still occasionally post about. But it was I had a couple hundred followers and was doing it in relative obscurity. And then when Tortured Poets came out, I did the dance video I did for The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, and it got 1.5 million views. And all of a sudden I went from like, complete obscurity to I had a couple thousand followers, and then I was like, okay, well, I'm liking this, and I like making content about Taylor Swift. I'm not upset to be in that content space, so just kind of kept exploring it, and like as it snowballed and I got enough viewers, it kind of became like my idea was eventually, can I get into the Creator Awards program and then get enough viewers and have some viral videos to pay for Taylor Swift tickets, right? It was all kind of linked to this idea of how do I leverage whatever this is into going to see Taylor. And yeah, that was kind of like the launch point of that. And then it became obviously different with the tour. I didn't go into the last leg of the tour thinking I'm going to become like the ticket guy, right? That wasn't the plan. But I posted some videos about it, and I was like, oh, people are really interested in this. People really care. People are invested. And it occurred to me that like, while Swifties Want Ticks is great and My Great War Effort, no one was really doing this on a way in TikTok that was like filling the constant need for information that you have to win this battle, right? Like there are people like Kat, Nash's mom, and others on here who were posting some content, but it was more like, once a week or whatever, once a city, they'd post kind of a bit. But the problem is with this stuff is like, you have to know like minute by minute, what's Ticketmaster's next move so I can do the counter move and be ready for it. So like, it's like, yeah, no one's really doing that on here. I guess I could do it. And I did.
So Dan, you're going to call this interview a bit of a Quentin Tarantino interview, because we're going to kind of go forwards and then backwards and a little bit. But there's a reason for my method, I promise you. So what are your hobbies in general besides the Taylor Swift part of things? Like your day to day, you're a husband, you're a parent of a son and a daughter. And I even had, just to prove, I had in my notes to talk about the Girl Guide cookies. So we're going to get to that as well.
Let's get there.
But like, talk to me about your day to day as a parent and your other hobbies that you enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I think, being a parent is my main thing that I care about. I mean, I have a job, my job pays the bills and keeps me employed and pays for everything I need. But like my main, desire is to be like a good parent and give my kids a great childhood and make them into, functional human beings as they get older. So that's the number one. But I mean, I'm also a huge Philly sports fan, as you can sort of see behind me. That bookcase is all full of Stephen King books. I'm a big Stephen King fan. I tend to be very focused on the things that I get into. So I'm a gamer for many, many years. I played online games like EverQuest and World of Warcraft, and even up until a few months ago, I was playing World of Warcraft Classic a lot. There was a time when I played a lot of online poker, and I was, I think probably one of the better, players in my scale before I stopped doing that. Like I tend to get very obsessive about the things I like. So I when I get into something, I throw 1,000% of my energy into it, whatever it is, and that's just kind of always how I've been. I guess a little obsessive personality, but it came in handy for these ticket stuff. So.
Well, and we're gonna get into the deeper dive of Taylor Swift, but before we get there, I mean, obviously your daughter is a fan, your son is a fan. From what I recall in some of your videos, your wife not so much. What does your family sort of think about what you're doing as this sort of TikTok unofficial you know, a content creator of helping Taylor Swift fans out.
Yeah, I mean, my wife, you know, I wouldn't say she doesn't like Taylor. She's a more of a casual fan of Taylor. I think she's probably had enough Taylor at times because, you know, the other three people in her household talk about Taylor a lot, and she's like, "Can we please have a different topic of conversation?" And I get it because she's not as deep in the weeds. But she still does like Taylor, and like I would love for the next tour to be able to take my whole family, all four of us, to go together, so she could see the experience firsthand too, because it's such a cool experience. But yeah, like what was the second half of the question?
Well, I guess really the question I'm asking is, what does, maybe it's more directed to your wife's in the sense of what does she think about your sort of TikTok fame
and fame? Yeah. So if my kids think it's cool. My kids are like, Dad, you know, how many followers do you have, and can we do TikToks with you? Like they think it's cool. My wife,
I asked because I sometimes see you in the car and sometimes doing your lives, and I didn't know if that's sort of like kind of gives.
The car live is more usually because like my daughter, like I'll probably do one tonight when my daughter is at acting, because I literally have an hour to sit in a parking lot, and I'm like, you know, what am I going to do for an hour? I'll go live on TikTok and chat with people or whatever, you know, or I could just. Or sometimes I might be like editing a video while I'm sitting in the car or something, but I got an hour to kill. You know, basically the acting class is 20 minutes from my house. So I'm not going back home for 20 minutes to turn back around for 20 minutes. So it's more like that kind of stuff, right? So most of my car lives are usually because I'm literally, my kids are doing something. No, my wife, you know, I think she's been very supportive at times. Like, you know, she last year when I told her like, hey, I'm interested in doing some stuff, like for my birthday, she went and bought me like the full like content creator kit of stuff, right? I gave her a couple things I wanted, and all of a sudden for my birthday, she's like, here's a ring light and some tripods and some microphones and this and that. And I'm like, okay, I wanted like one or two things, but she bought me like the whole kit. So she's been very supportive in that way of like, you know, she understands like this is something that I'm interested in. There's probably times where she's like, I want you to be like more present here too. Because this, especially the last month, has been very time consuming. And I've tried to make time for it without losing focus at home, but I'm sure there's times where I've been less focused than I should be here because I've been, you know, mentally in Toronto or in Vancouver or in Indy or whatever.
As I was saying, we're kind of going all over the place, but for those that are just joining us, we are talking to Dan Shapiro. With you a little bit during this interview, but how would you describe your title on here on TikTok with specifically the Taylor Swift a source information that you're sort of giving? How would you describe yourself in an elevator 30-second spiel?
I don't know how to describe this, but I mean, I guess it's like the TikTok Taylor ticket guy at this point. I guess I'm kind of the foremost source, at least for the Era Store, right? Became like the source of information to go to if you just need to know what was going on. So I guess that's kind of where it's at, right? I mean, beyond that, you know, I don't know what exactly my content space is going to look like. You know, most of my content, I think, before we got into this was much less serious, in a way, right? It was more like lots of jokes and memes, and like when we did the Taylor Swift profile bead challenge over the summer, I loved that whole bead challenge. I made entire like characters and personas for the bead thing, and I like doing a lot more of that like unserious content. Obviously, I've been into more of like the serious, factual, analytical content space that I do think I do a pretty good job with it. I think I'm good at explaining complicated problems in simple ways. Doing IT for my job has kind of prepared me for that, right? Like what I do for my job is basically the same thing. I'm trying to explain, you know, complex enterprise collaboration software to some senior executive or someone in the business who doesn't really care but needs the information. So like the ability to distill big complex data into small, you know, bites of this is the most important thing. You know, that's essentially for me, like I'm good at that because that's what I do day to day. And this was the same problem, just a different flavor of content, right? But yeah, I guess at the moment it's like the Era Store ticket guy, but I don't know what it's going to be in the post Era Store era, other than someone who's a dad who likes making fun content and likes talking about the things he's passionate about, which includes Taylor and plenty of other things that you see in my room.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to Dan Shapiro, who has become an official source for mannerising, grabbing the tickets and being a fan, etc. Someone writes, "We are parents. We get stuck in the car a lot." Dan, would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, especially those of us who, live in small towns where everything we do is like 20 minutes from our house, like I do, where almost any activity that we do, it's like not worth me driving back home after I drop my kids off. So I sit in the car, most of the time. They're not at an age anymore where I need to be there in the class with them or watch them. Um, I've got a preteen who's convinced he's probably more than a preteen, and another almost preteen who's like 9 going on 19. So and we like to cater to their independence, I guess, in a way, right? Like I don't want to sit there over their shoulder. And some of the stuff they do, like acting class, there's not even anywhere to sit and watch them. So I'll just sit in the car, and like I said, usually I'll take the time to either work on making content for TikTok if I have an idea, or editing content, or if I don't and I just want to kill an hour, I'll go live and chat with people. I'm not sure, like, I might do it tonight. I'm really curious what it's going to be like when there's not 9,000 questions of when's the queue opening? When's the queue opening? It'll be interesting to do it live without that. And I'm sure it'll be less people, but hopefully maybe better discussion.
Now, for those that are watching, the homework I want to give to both to our people watching is please double tap the screen. If you're new to my live, please give my TikTok account a follow. If you do have questions, keep them appropriate. Please write them in the comments, and I will try to get to your questions. Someone named Lisa writes, he helped me score seats for my kid for N2, and the tears during almost the whole show was priceless. So you do have fans here that are watching this live. So Dan, I appreciate this time that you're giving us.
Yeah.
How many concerts have you seen? Well, sorry, first question. I'm going to ask you some of the questions that I was asking Taylor Swift fans during my broadcast in front of Skydome. What does Taylor Swift and her music mean to you?
I mean, I just think she is the most brilliant lyricist of the generation, and I was raised by parents who raised me on singer-songwriters. So when I was a kid, we were in the car, it was like Harry Chapin's greatest hits, Joan Baez, Peter, Paul and Mary, all singers who would tell a story through song. And I've always loved that. And it kind of like fed it somehow into like the late 90s, like alt rock, like Counting Crows, Toad the Wet Sprocket, which were like kind of my favorite bands for a long time. And then somehow flipped into like the early 2000s, like emo scene. And that was kind of like, I guess, the pipeline that brought me to Taylor somehow. And with my wife then kind of making me, give country music a chance when we first met. We were just dating at the time. But the second I heard Taylor, I'm like, she's doing it. She's like telling stories, and she's, very talented, obviously. And she writes a great hook, but she also can tell a real story through song. And even when she was 16, I'm like, how is she writing some of this stuff? What an impressive, ability to do that. So I think for me, I love that what she can bring out in the song. And there's songs that she has that, like, I know if I listen to, I'm gonna be in a pool of tears because they pull at like the right parts of my brain of like they're gonna trigger certain emotions and stuff. So for me, yeah, I just think she's brilliant. I love that I can share it with my kids. I love that it's something that we can bond with across generations in the way that like my parents and I kind of bonded with, say, Harry Chapin or whatever. That I still love Harry Chapin. And like it's something that, like, my dad was on his deathbed about a decade ago. We sat there for a couple of days and we listened to music, and it was just like this, everything they played. I'm like, I had this vision of, wow, like I get where all this came from because this is their music, but now it's mine too. And like my kids, now I have that, right? So it's a bonding experience with my kids. It's, and then I think when you go there and you to the Eras Tour and you see it firsthand of like the passion that's shared by everyone in that place, it's such an incredible feeling. The only thing I've been able to compare it to is being in the stadium when the Phillies won the World Series in 2008. It's an unmatched kind of feeling. It's really incredible. So.
Briefly, I know you and I chatted offline about this, but sort of my small connection, not to your level of this, was I brought my tripod down to Skydome, Rogers Center, home of the Toronto Blue Jays World Series champions when they did beat Philly.
Yeah, I want to talk about 93. It's okay.
We'll get to that part, but
oh no, Joe Carter PSD. All right.
But I brought my tripod in front of Skydome, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go down there around 3 or 4 o'clock. I know they open up the doors at 4 o'clock or whatever. I'm going to bring my tripod down there. I'm going to stay there for an hour and just interview a couple people. I ended up staying like the whole night. I met hundreds and hundreds of fans, and the positivity that surrounded me, like, positivity is contagious. And I'm not saying I'm a rude person, but normally sometimes people get crowded and people can get impatient. In that crowd, I didn't see anyone really being impatient. People were being kind and doing photos in front of the bracelet. I'm just wondering, in your experience going to these concerts, like, what do you think about the Taylor Swift Swiftie? Like, how would you describe a Swiftie in your words?
Yeah, by and large, it is one of the most welcoming kind of large tent communities that you can find. The vibe in every city that hosts the Eras Tour is just unmatched because the people coming there are generally kind people. Of course, you always hear horror stories, and everyone's going to have their exceptions, but I think by and large, it is really such a positive set of people who are there, who are, I guess, generally kind people who are there for good reasons, who want to be kind to each other, who know they have something in common. You can look at someone else and you see they're wearing a bracelet, and immediately, this is someone who I can break bread with. And we've heard that from every city, and I think cities like Vancouver in particular that really embraced it. I heard Toronto was great. We were in Toronto so briefly that I missed it. But like in Indy, for example, I got to spend a little more time in town, and we went out the one day before the show to the Children's Museum, and it was phenomenal. Just the experience of being there with all the Swifties, some who were going to the show, some who had already gone, some who weren't going at all, just came for the vibes. Like everyone there it was just a fantastic experience, so positive, so kind. So yeah, I guess we have a good reputation at this point of like the Swifties bring a lot of positivity when we go somewhere. I don't think we heard a lot of towns that took it any other way, right? Like every stop in the Eras Tour, that's what you heard.
I couldn't believe it. Like, I knew it was going to be a positive vibe, but I think even when I got close to the venue, I didn't have any friendship bracelets, and I didn't want to,
some though, right?
I offered to pay for, I wanted to pay somebody for, because I'm like, if I'm going to go live on camera, I wanted to have at least one. And I offered to give someone $5, and she's like, a true Swiftie will not charge for the friendship bracelet. And they gave me one, and next thing you know, by the end of my interview, I had my
I would say your arm is still full. Yeah, absolutely.
But it was just a beautiful experience, and I enjoyed it. Talk to me. You kind of touched on it, but talk to me about your Toronto experience. Not just the process of getting those tickets from that secret person, but just your Toronto. Going there. Like you said, you hadn't really explored Toronto that long, but you as a Phillies fan going into Skydome and like just seeing Toronto in that regard.
It was nice to see it not set up as a baseball stadium. I've been to, I think it was maybe the third or fourth time in my life I've been to Toronto. So I'm not the first time I've ever been there. But it had been a long time. I think it had been probably almost 25 years maybe since the last time I was up there. We literally drove up. We got in the car without a hotel, without tickets, without anything. And I handed my son the phone and I said, all right, figure it out. Because he's very good at that kind of stuff. And he found a good hotel and he figured out the transit stuff. And, we drove up and we basically got to the hotel, dropped our stuff off for 10 minutes, got into the GO train. It was like super easy. We stayed near the airport, I guess. Malton? I don't know, something like that. We stayed near the airport. Took the train in, super easy, got off, walked. It was like the easiest transit experience. And I'm kind of like a nervous traveler. I'm not great at it. Luckily, my son is very confident with it, so I couldn't just trusted him. But yeah, like it was great getting in and out. And once we got there, it was fantastic. But it was nice that it was a baseball stadium because it didn't make me think about the Joe Carter home run. No, but it was really cool to be there. And honestly, comparing the two venues, because I saw her in India, I saw her in Toronto. Seeing in Toronto was very different, and it was because the stadium was 50,000 versus 70,000, much more intimate. The round baseball stadium setup, everything just felt closer. Mm-hmm. So I really liked the vibe of seeing her in Toronto. I thought that was really cool, and it was very different than like the football stadium vibe, where you just kind of felt like you're in a giant cavern and Taylor's somewhere in there. The baseball stadium was like, oh, we're all here together. And I just had kind of a different vibe to it.
And again, because I don't want to keep you forever, I know you go in really good depth about your getting those tickets and the process of getting there and meeting the person. So if you want to watch that story, I don't want you to even skim that great story. He posted it, he's documented it on his TikTok feed, or you gotta hear that story. It's really good.
My very first playlist, if you go to my profile, is Toronto parentheses and Jason. And there's like there's three main stories, and there's going to be, by the way, at some point, I'm doing a part 4, an epilogue to the Jason saga that I have not yet recorded, but I need to at some point. But there's going to be a part 4. But there are the 3 parts of that to kind of tell the whole story, and it was an adventure.
Yeah, the story. Yes, everything that I've watched so far of you getting those tickets, the process of you getting there, and everything. Like, I didn't even want to touch it in this interview because you explain it so well in those videos that you guys got to go to his TikTok feed and watch those videos because it was really, really good. So when you were at the concert, did anyone come up to you? Did anyone recognize you from your fame of, helping other people out? But did people come up to you?
Non-stop, I'd say. Even more. There was some in Indy. There was a fair bit in Indy. There was even more in Toronto. Yeah, tons of people came up to me, which I've said this before in my videos. I was so happy to have all those interactions. Like, none of them felt annoying. People were always like, "Oh, I didn't want to bother you," or I didn't say hi because I didn't want to bug you. But I'm like, honestly, like I liked having those interactions. But yeah, tons of people did. A couple of my followers came by. We talked for a while. One had come by. It was a woman who was about a little older than me, I guess, and then her daughter-in-law, who was a little younger than me. And we talked for a while. And then it comes up in conversation that her daughter-in-law is like a 2-time Canadian Olympic swimmer, Savannah King. I'm like, why are you excited to meet me? Like, this is the wrong, like, you swim against Katie Ledecky in the Olympics. I'm some random guy who made TikToks, right? So like, that was cool to have those. People would ask me for selfies and stuff, and then I get tagged on Instagram and some random, and it was just like very surreal. And like my friends were all like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? Any of this stuff. But yeah, absolutely. I so many experiences. The person who was sitting right next to us in our seats knew who I was. Like, literally, it was a couple sitting next to me. He was about my age, I guess. He and his wife or girlfriend or whatever. They were awesome. They were so much fun. But he was like, "Oh yeah, you're the guy." I'm like, "Yeah, hi." We chatted for a while, but literally, all people sitting around me. Yeah, absolutely. Which is, again, I liked those moments. And the more funny part for me is like, after this show, I think it was after Indy maybe or something, we went out to dinner at a Longhorn Steakhouse in, my hometown, not in Indy, not in my hometown. And the table next to me goes, "Oh, hey, it's Dan Shapiro. How you doing?" And my wife just rolling her eyes like, "You got to be kidding me." I'm like, "See, honey, I'm not joking. People know who I am."
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's been weird. I mean, it's a very niche bit of celebrity, but obviously in very certain specific domains, when I show up, people know who I am. And honestly, most people who see me are there partly, many of them are there because of me. And if they know who I am, I probably help them in their journey. And obviously there's a lot of gratitude, and it goes both ways. Like, I'm happy to have the conversation. They want to thank me. I'm happy to hear it because it makes me feel good, and it makes them, get to recognize the person who they felt held their hand through this Ticketmaster nonsense.
Well, that's what I said in my opening. I said, if you're a fan of Taylor Swift, you must be a fan of Dan Shapiro, because the two kind of coincide, you know what I mean? And even for me, like, I unfortunately didn't get tickets to the concert, but you were just on my feed no matter what. And you were just coming up. And I was kind of watching you like a Joe Rogan podcast, like, because you'd be on for hours. But you were just like, I mean, I get lives anywhere from 100 to maybe 500 people watching my lives. You were getting thousands, and you were answering.
There's a couple. Yeah, there was a couple. Most of mine, I'd say, were probably in like the really popular times would be like, a couple hundred, maybe like 200 to 500. There were a couple times when I went live when it was like near a ticket drop, and there was like 2,000 people in there. I'm like, this is over freaking willing. Yeah. And those were I think few and far between. But I had a couple of those where there was 1,000 to 2,000. I'm just like, this is wild to me. But it was so hard to keep up with those.
Yeah, I got it. Now, again, if you're just joining us, please help us out by double tapping the screen. If you're new to my live, give my TikTok account a follow. If you have any questions for Dan Shapiro, put them in the comments. A question I have for you is, did you have any pressure from doing this? Like, when it got to that point where you're starting to realize this isn't just 5 or 10 Taylor Swift fans asking me a couple questions. It was getting to the point. I watched your live, so I'm sharing this from a fan perspective of you. I was seeing some of the questions you were getting, and you were getting, like, it was flooding of comments. Were you getting overwhelmed? Did you feel any sort of sense of pressure of not saying the wrong thing to upset a Swiftie?
Sure, absolutely, right. And there's a couple kinds of pressure that come with it. And part of it is like, you know, number one is the pressure to keep up with Ticketmaster and be on top of it, so that people who have put their trust in me to like be the person who's helping them, that like I'm not failing their trust, right? I don't want to be the one who like completely misses a drop or like completely misleads people. And luckily, I think people got the basic gist of my message, that like it's more important to be educated than assume Dan knows all the answers, right? Because that was kind of the gist of it, right? Like sometimes I was right, sometimes I was wrong, but the main thing I was giving you the information to figure it out yourself. So that was one kind of pressure. Another kind of pressure, yeah, absolutely. When I was live, it was like keeping up with the questions, and then like seeing the same question asked 4,000 times in a live, and it's like, how many times do I answer this question? Because I get like it's TikTok, right? So context is lacking. People join midway through the live, they haven't heard me answer the question, so to them they don't know that I've answered the question 34 times already. But so I was sort of like weighing that of how much do I answer the questions, and yeah, you don't want to like offend people and piss people off. And there were times when I'd say something like, I know there were times when I talk about how I didn't think Gracie was the best opener that Taylor ever had in terms of like matching the vibe of the Eras Tour. And then I'd be like, everyone's like, oh, you're slandering Gracie. I'm like, no, I love Gracie. I listen to Gracie's music, but like I thought Paramore was a better opener, right? And so the stuff like that, were like these little things. But I think for the most part, I guess my content tends to be more informative and innocuous and silly and fun, where I'm not usually stepping on landmines. I'm sure there's times I will, because every person who makes content eventually says something stupid, or something gets taken out of context. Especially on TikTok, context is the biggest issue. Like you'll make a video and it makes total sense if you have the story, but then someone comes into it with no context and goes, I don't know who this guy is. I've never seen him before. He's saying a bunch of crap. It makes no sense to me. And I go, well, okay, that's fine. But if you had watched my other 200 videos, you would know. But yeah, as a creator on TikTok, especially, you have to kind of understand that like people don't always have that. So yeah, there's pressure to not screw up. There's pressure to be on top of the news. There's pressure to not make mistakes too, right? Because I didn't want to be like, hey, there's not going to be a drop. And like the day of the big Vancouver drop, the 7,000 ticket backstage drop, I said on my live 30 times that day, there's not going to be a drop tonight. And there was, right? I said there might be a drop tomorrow, and there was a drop on Monday, not Tuesday. And I felt like, Jesus, I fucked up. Like people were gonna be mad at me. But the larger response in general was, well, you told us that what we needed to do in case there was a drop. So we did those things. We followed the right accounts. We did other things, and then we were there to like win the game. Even though you told us, no, you also said don't trust Dan. So yeah, like I think there's three different kinds of pressure. And yes, absolutely felt a lot of that. Today I woke up feeling weirdly less pressured than I have in a while, because I'm like, well, I don't have to do anything. Like there's no need for me to make a video today about ticket stuff. The next Taylor Swift concert isn't who knows when. And like, so it felt kind of freeing to like have that, all right, and I can go back to not feeling like it's a part-time job.
While you were talking, someone named Elizabeth writes, I give Dan all credit for getting my mom and I to the Vancouver shows. I'm forever grateful to him.
Thank you. I get a lot of those messages and I never get tired of them. So feel free to tag me in your videos from the shows, or, DM me, comment. I mean, I genuinely love reading every one of those messages, because I know what it feels like to want to go to this show for a very long time, to invest years of mental capacity and emotional bandwidth in it, and then finally have that moment. So yes, absolutely. Like I never get tired of seeing those.
What was the most, you kind of touched on this, but just for clarity, what was the most common question you were getting?
When is the queue opening? Basically, it was the constant question, when's the queue opening? People always wanted to know, what's the next move, right? What is Ticketmaster's next move, so that they can be prepared for it? And I know everyone always wanted specifics, like the queue is going to open exactly, but we never know, right? And again, I think the thing I kept stressing to people is, I can't tell you when the queue is going to open. I can tell you how to find out when the queue is open and how to react the best way when the queue opens and the right things to do. But I can't tell you it's going to open at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. I can just tell you, I can synthesize a lot of data for you and tell you what I think is going to happen based upon history, or what I think is going to happen based upon knowing what these things are. Like Vancouver, for example, other than missing the timing very somewhat on the backstage drop, I nailed Vancouver. I told people a week and a half before Vancouver, I'm going to tell you how it's going to go. And it went exactly like that. Like, it was almost to a T what I predicted 2 weeks before in terms of when things happened and the kind of drops we had and the numbers of tickets we had. I mean, so, there were times when it was really clear, but I'd be clear that it was, like, I could say it's going to be good, right? And then there were times where I could tell people in Toronto, I said, Toronto, I can't predict this, guys. This is we have no idea, right? That can go any which way. So, but I think people got that. I hope that most people got that. I wasn't a crystal ball, and I could just, point them. I could empower them, right? It was more about less about informing people and more about empowering people to like make their own decisions correctly. Because it's not a simple process. Ticketmaster's process is anything but clear, obvious, whatever, right? So you just need to be educated. You need to know what's going on and at least have some idea of where your mental bandwidth should be spent on any given day to give yourself the best chance.
Sarah writes, and you answered this before, but she's just joining us now. What are your plans for TikTok now that the tour is over? I know you touched on Girl Guy cookies, which we're going to get to before we wrap. So what are your plans for TikTok now that the tour is over? As you woke up this morning.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of things. I'm literally still working on some kind of post-tour wrap-up type content. I've got some comments from videos that I thought were more general that I still want to do responses to. So there'll be some of that, of kind of like the retrospective content and, trying to put a capstone on this chapter of whatever my TikTok era is. But yeah, as we shift into the next few months, so as I did last year, from January to March, my channel is a lot about helping Nora try and sell Girl Scout cookies. Because she loves doing it. She also was officially selected as a media girl for our Girl Scout region this year, which is only like about 20 girls in our whole Eastern PA were selected, and she's one of them. So she's, really doing the online stuff. She's going to do lots of media content. We have a very big plan for Girl Scout season, and we've been working on it since last Girl Scout season. And I don't know how much of it will really happen because it requires a lot of effort from her, and she is a 9-year-old girl. So getting that to happen, we'll see. But there's some really fun stuff we have cooked up that I think people will enjoy if they're Taylor fans or they like my parody videos or whatever, that is all related to trying to sell Girl Scout cookies, because her goal is trying to sell 2,000 boxes of cookies this year, and that's a lot for the town we live in. Like, we've done about 1,000 to 1,200 a couple times. We've never got close to 2,000. I said, Nora, you want to sell 2,000 boxes of these? You need to get the internet to buy 1,000 of them. So we're gonna try. We're gonna try and see if we can get the Swifties out there to support her. You can, and if I don't think they ship to Canada directly, but for my Canadian fans, you can donate. Or if you really want cookies, just DM me. We'll talk. But
well,
yeah,
that's what I was going to ask, because I am in Canada. But what I was going to do here was I want to give you $50, and you can maybe buy donate that money so you can give Girl Guy cookies to some of your select, however you want to do it, but a pay it forward situation where I email transfer you $50, okay, and then you can give out Girl Guys cookies to some diehards that maybe can't afford it. Maybe, I don't know. We'll figure out the logistics. Yeah,
our troop. We take our donations every year, and we always have somewhere to go with them. Some years we give them to the military because we have some of the girls in the troop have family members who are deployed. So sometimes we'll send them overseas. Sometimes we'll send them to a local, food banks or whatever. So I'm not sure what our charity is yet this year, but we always have a charity for our troop. And yeah, donations are great, and I appreciate it very much. You're the first one for the year. So
well, I hope I want to start the movement. So I'm saying it, right, so we can clip this. I'm donating at least $50 to you, right, because you don't deliver to Canada, but hopefully you can get it to someone else.
That's 10 boxes right there. So she's 10 boxes into her goal already.
Right, there we go.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, obviously, yeah. So other than cookie stuff, I mean, what else am I going to do? I mean, a lot of my content before all this was still Taylor related. So I was in the middle of a number of like Taylor related projects I was doing. I was doing a listening project where I'd re-listen to each album, and then I do a couple videos talking about different songs that I connected with in the re-listen, and I do a rating update for it. And I'd done every single album except for Speak Now, Debut, and Rep. And I was waiting on Debut and Rep because I was really hoping Taylor would announce them. But now that she hasn't, I'm just going to finish that project up. And then someone had said, hey, when you finish that, can you take all of your 10 out of 10 songs and rank them? And I said, that is a Sophie's choice. Like, I don't know if I could do that, but I'm going to try. So I'll do my top whatever songs. I had another project I started working on where I literally took every single Taylor Swift duet or collab that she ever did, and I wanted to do like a rating or ranking, a discussion about her collabs, because I'm a big collab fan of hers. I love her collabs. So yeah, so I had some of those things that like I was working on before Miami, and all of it kind of got put on hold because I needed to make 4 Ticketmaster videos per day. So now that is no longer hanging over my head, now I can get back to some of those other things. So yeah, still Taylor content. As you can tell, I like Philly sports, and the Eagles are making a good run this year, so maybe I'll do some Eagles talk. But a lot of it is just more parenting stuff and fun stuff, and we'll see what Taylor does, because a lot of it is honestly like, does Taylor tell us anything, or does she just go into relative hiding for a long time now, and we're all kind of waiting to see what her next move is. And I think it'll be interesting, not just for me, but for like a lot of Swiftie creators who've been fed by her for such a long time, of her being in the public eye, doing this tour, making appearances, releasing content. And now she did her dive into the stage, she did her little wave, and she left us with nothing, right? And it's the first time in a while that it's like, well, what's next? Because we've always had a what's next until now for the last, 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting time, I think, and I'm curious to see what the other Swiftie creators do.
What do you think? And I'm asking this from your background, your work background. Do you have any opinion about these live streams, free live streams on YouTube and TikTok that was showing a concert? What I mean is not just, I guess it was like a combination of a person, like I felt like they were at a home studio or something at home, and then they had like a lot. So were they paying someone? Like, how did that work, and what were your thoughts of all that?
Like people like Tess Bone and stuff who did like the whole setup for it?
I think where I've just seen random people that were just bobbing their head, but they must have had a friend or a contact there, and they were streaming their. Sure. I'm just curious the logistics of it and what you thought of it.
I mean, I remember the very early part of the tour before we had like the industry of streaming set up, right? And and even the early shows, you could find someone streaming, right? So you would go on, and the show came on. I'd sit there, I'd go on YouTube, and I'd search for Taylor Swift Live, or I'd go on TikTok, and you'd find something, but you were like trying to find a decent stream. And it was a lot of work to try and like keep up with it. And then suddenly you had people like Tess Bone and others who turned it into kind of an industry where like they took the hard part of being the one who would constantly find feeds, and they'd restream it, right? So as a person who just wanted to watch the show and not have to worry about finding the perfect stream, someone like Tess, who was, I guess, the first who really kind of did it well, was wonderful, because the fact is she's putting in the work. It's a lot of work for her, because she has to find good streams, good audio quality. She has to have backups in case the person who's streaming cuts out. She has to. It's a whole thing. Like, think of her like as the producer of like a broadcast, right? She's running the broadcast channel, switching angles, all that kind of stuff, right? And it's a lot of work for her. But then for everyone who watches it, we don't have to do that work. She's doing it for us. And it was an incredible service to the community. And I think it made it more accessible for people to watch these shows via streams when you didn't have to invest so much of your own. Like in the beginning, I could have been like the guy making videos telling you how to find good live streams, right? Like with ticket stuff, because you had to do the work. You really had to know what you were doing. And then as we got maybe a few months into the tour, I don't know exactly when Tess started. It was probably sometime over the first summer of the tour, maybe spring. And people saw what she was doing, and there was a guy on YouTube who got canceled, forget his name. People like that, they were the ones at the forefront, kind of like, okay, we're going to turn this into like a little cottage industry. And that's when I think it changed. And people also knew, like, hey, if I go to the show, if I go live, maybe Tess will broadcast me, I'll get more attention that way too. There were people coming in my live sometimes saying, hey, I'm going to be at the show. You can watch my stream, and I'd watch them sometimes. So yeah, it became like a cottage industry. And, people who do that, I mean, Tess, I'm sure, gets plenty of, she has plenty of donations and gifts and stuff like that for what she's doing. So does anyone who's live, right? It's a way to kind of pay back the effort you're putting into doing it. It's a lot of work to do that.
So here we go. We're going to get into it. What do you think about Ticketmaster? What do you think needs to fix the process of buying tickets? So basically, I've just promoted you to CEO of Ticketmaster, Dan. What is your first decision that you're making this morning as CEO? Dan, everyone that is watching, you're just joining. I have just given Dan President CEO title of Ticketmaster. Dan, what is your first move today?
The first thing we're doing is we have to figure out a way to be better about keeping the scalpers out of the sales. So whatever that way is, there needs to be something that we can do to beef up verified fan. And the fact is, we as Ticketmaster, right, have all this data on people, and we should be able to tell what people's ticket buying patterns look vaguely realistic and which ones look like a bunch of scalper nonsense, right? So they should be able to do a better job with verified fan to reduce the amount of scalpers that get in there. So that's one thing for sure. The transferability of tickets is a problem. Resale prices are a problem. Those are problems that Ticketmaster can't solve, right? To a degree. Like the artists have to decide if they're going to allow ticket transfer and how they're going to allow it. The artists can decide if they want to allow resale, and the government has to regulate some things, right? Like we need government regulation in the US and Canada on ticket prices and resale, which is why it was so bad here versus other areas. But I'd say the number one thing they would need to do is really tighten up the way they handle their verified fan program, because there's too many bots that get into the sales. The next thing is just communication, right? It should not be so inscrutable. So people should have a way when they do these mystery, you're flagged in or you're not type sales. There should be a way for you to know whether or not you're flagged, because people are devoting all this time and energy to this stuff for no reason when they're not even eligible. And that's a terrible scenario. And I always say, like, the solution is not let everyone in. The solution is let people know whether or not they're in. Give them a way to find out for themselves. So I think it's better communication, more tools for people to be proactive about understanding what Ticketmaster is doing, and way, way, way better control on giving verified fan access to more verified fans and less bots. Because that's the huge part of the problem. And it's not an easy problem, because the bots can throw computing power at it. They can overwhelm the system, where even if Ticketmaster blocks 95%, they still get 5% through, and that 5% is still going to end up being a problem for everyone. But, I just feel like they can do better. I feel like they can do better, and that they have the data to do better. So I would love to see that change. And I would love to see government regulation to force some change, or at least if you restrict the profitability of this, then there's much less incentive for the bots and the scalpers to do it, right? They have so much incentive to do it right now, because you get that ticket for $16, right? And you sell it for $800. That's ridiculous, but they were doing that. And how much does each of those tickets pay for, right? It just pays, like, each one time they win that little battle and they sell that ticket, that paid for how much computing power they needed to keep fighting for the next round. If you cap the resale prices at some vaguely reasonable amount, where's the incentive, right? And now it's a fairer game. They don't have the reason to go after it. They can't spend $50,000 a month on computing power if they're only going to make $50 a ticket, not $800 a ticket.
What are your thoughts, and this is not to set you up to your fellow American fans, but what are your thoughts about, like, Toronto, for example, or Vancouver, for example, probably being overwhelmed with people from a million other countries, not just the US, taking up seats from either local Vancouver fans or local Toronto fans?
Yeah, it's a frequent topic of debate in my comments, of, like, the locals basically saying, the concert should be for people from the area. Um, I don't think it necessarily is an argument that holds water. I mean, the reality is the concert's open to anyone who wants to attend the concert. Toronto, for whatever reason, was the only city that she selected in the entire Northeast U.S. corridor for the final tour, right? I mean, anyone who lived in any of the major metropolitan areas, from Philly up to New York, arguably even Washington, Baltimore, Toronto was their closest city. You know, Indy was about the same, but like Toronto was the closest for many of us, myself included, which is why when the sale opened, my wife and I were like, well, let's try for Toronto. And we did. We didn't get tickets that way, but we did. All of our attempts to get tickets were for Toronto. And Vancouver was, I think, again, maybe a bit of a special case, being the last show of the tour. Obviously, a lot of people wanted to come. I don't know if it would have been as like inundated with non-locals if it wasn't the last show of the tour, to be honest, because it was a hard place to get to. Travel-wise, it was very expensive. Staying there was very expensive, etc. But I do think that no one owns their shows. And for whatever reason, in many cases, it was cheaper for Americans to travel out of our country and go see Taylor in a different country, whether it was Toronto, whether it was the UK, rest of Europe, than it was to just go to your local hometown show because of resale prices. And, you guys, I know everyone complains about exchange rates and Canadian, you guys don't get paid much more than we do in terms of your actual salaries, but then the exchange rates are rough. And I get it, but I mean, those prices in US dollars for the shows in the US, many of the shows were even more expensive than the Toronto shows, which were very, very, very expensive. So to a degree, like my best friend's, my best friend's parents, his sister and his wife flew to the UK to see Taylor in London. They live outside Miami, but it was cheaper for them to go to London, spend a week touring London and Paris, seeing Taylor in Wembley than it was to see her in her hometown. So I don't know. I'm not a big anyone owns their show believer. I think it'd be nice if I would say this. I think it would be nice if, for the last minute tickets, if Ticketmaster did give priority to local people in some way, like based on their address or something, because those people are in town. They should have the best chance to get there. So there's things they could do for like the last minute tickets. I think that should give some bias to people who are local. But I think for any other ticket, when someone has time to travel, if you want to go, you can go. You register. You see if you get picked. That's just my perspective on it. I know a lot of Canadians don't agree with me, and I get it.
But that being said, Dan, I gave you an unfair question. You and I are both baseball fans. We know that you can't, like, when you go to Seattle and you have a whole bunch of Canadians coming over and taking over Seattle to watch, and you have, even in Boston, like sometimes the away team sometimes overtakes the home team. I know with hockey, there's certain sections that are reserved that they don't allow you to resell your tickets if you have a certain section. So there could be minor things that could be done to avoid certain tickets getting to an opposing country or opposing away team, so to speak. But as you said, like there's only so much that can be done, right? And I think it goes both ways. Some people probably from Canada were going to the US too. So it's not like it's,
Yeah, I mean, anyone's allowed to go to a store, but I understand the exchange rate parts that make it harder for Canadians. I really do. But in terms of actual dollar cost, I mean, Toronto tickets cost as much as the most expensive US shows. So, like, those were horribly expensive for someone who's got Canadian dollars versus US dollars. But like Toronto night 4, 5, and 6 were as expensive as some of the worst shows we've ever seen in terms of American dollar cost. So, I mean, whatever it wasn't cheap for anyone. For the Toronto shows. The Vancouver shows were not, those were not expensive Taylor tickets. The expensive part was going to Vancouver. That was the expensive part.
You probably could comment on this because of just your traveling and meeting fans. But where I was set up with my tripod in front of Skydome, meeting so many fans, it was such a interesting mix of fans. It would be, well, to the left of me, I had someone that was at their first Taylor Swift concert. I had someone beside me that had went to 10 Taylor Swift concerts. I had someone that was there from Dubai or Australia. I had someone that was there from Toronto. I was there. Someone that said, "Oh, it took me 10 minutes to get tickets. I bought them 2 years ago." Someone that said it took me 2 months to get tickets. I spent $16 on tickets. I spent $4,000 on tickets. What's your comment about the mix of all that put into one venue? That you have people that are stressing for tickets. Oh, it took me 2 seconds. I just went online, bought the ticket, no problem. To like, what an interesting mix of people.
It is. It is. No, it truly is, right? Because I mean, everyone's had different experiences with the Great War, as we call it in the ticket world, right? Where some people just got lucky and they got into the pre-sale and they got a code and they bought their ticket and it was fine. And that's a lot of people who had that positive experience. But the last minute ticket people are the ones who've been fighting the battle for a long time. And then, yeah, the mix of like, I think what I was talking about earlier in the interview, the mix of demographics, because there's all kinds of Swifties, right? She spans generations. So you have older fans like myself who've been there from the start, many of whom, I didn't, but many of whom had gone to her previous tours. And then, you have our kids, who are there for the first time. You have other fans who've gotten into the tail of the last couple of years, because the fact is there's so many new Swifties who became fans during the last couple of years. The Eras Tour movie created a ton of new Swifties. The Tortured Poets created new Swifties. All of her recent albums. I mean, think about how much of her content as a musician has come out since this tour. Like half of her content that she created in her career basically was released in a time that essentially was being toured for the first time on this show. So, I mean, there's so much material that you could have become a fan from her folk music, right? In the Folklore Evermore era. You could have become a fan from the pop music and Midnights. You could have been a fan from the movie. All those people are coming together. And those are a lot of the first time people, because there's just been so many reasons to become a first time Swiftie in the last couple of years. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting mix. Yeah, and then I'm sure if you sat in your section and you asked everyone, what did you pay for your ticket? The answers would vary so wildly between the guy who was like, oh yeah, I got it for, face value, to the person who paid $5,000 an hour before the show on StubHub. I guess the lesson I try to teach my kids is someone else's good fortune is not your misfortune. So if you paid $3,000 for your ticket, does it maybe feel bad to you that the person sitting next to you paid $20? Sure. But the fact that they got lucky or they were able to get that ticket or whatever, I like to look at it as this is not your loss, right? It was their gain. It's beneficial. Be happy for them. You didn't lose anything by them having a less bad experience than you did. And in a way, and I tell this to a lot of my followers who reach out to me, I said that you earned that ticket. You worked your butt off to get that ticket, So when you got that last minute drop, you worked hard, right? So in a way, it's almost like more satisfying because you had to do so much work to get yourself in the door versus someone who had that simpler experience of I just went and bought a ticket on Ticketmaster, no big deal, So I don't know, you can look at it all different ways. I think a lot of the people who follow me had to work very, very hard to get their tickets. They had to be the first one in a queue. They had to know exactly what was happening. And other people who were there, just like you said, they got a code, they clicked the button, they bought tickets, and they were happy. And good for them. It's good for them. I wish everyone had the good experience and not the I spent 2 years of my life being tormented by Ticketmaster experience.
For those that are just joining us, we are talking to Dan Shapiro. If you're new to my live, please take a quick second to give my account a follow. Most likely 99% of you already are following Dan Shapiro. But if you're not, please make sure you're giving Dan Shapiro a follow. If you can, please take a moment to double tap the screen and puts our content in the For You page. Bring some more people into the live. Dan, we're going to ask you $1 million question that's going to create a little bit of controversy here. In your opinion, and I have my opinion too on this, what do you think about fans who are scammed? Because, because I'm going to start off, because I don't want to throw you under the bus here. I'll take the strong take that fans that got scammed have to take responsibility in this. Because to me, you go on Ticketmaster or you go on StubHub or something like StubHub to buy tickets. From the stories I heard of fans getting scammed, and you can tell me if I'm wrong and you can give your opinion, It was that they went into these like Facebook groups and they just started private messaging some random person. Oh, I'll transfer the tickets, blah, 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 blah. Most of the stories I heard of people getting scammed could have been prevented if they used common sense. What's your opinion on fans that got scammed?
I think that there's a very problematic kind of like crossover of the desperation that people have and the desire they have and the sophistication of the scammers. So I think that for a while I'd say that's generally true, right? That most of the scammers were not that sophisticated. And if you took half a second to think about what you were doing, then you would have realized you were being scammed. But people are gullible, and the scammers got better and better about how to take advantage of it. And I'll give you an example from my own family. Okay, one of my cousins, my dad's cousins, she older, she's about 75 or so, and she's still active on Facebook. And at one point, I got like a Facebook message request from her, and it was from her actual account, asking me to like help her with something. And it was like, hey, can you help me with this and do this? And like click this link or whatever. And I'm like, this is a little sus. But then literally she FaceTimed me. And it briefly I could see it was her, and it kind of cut off pretty fast. But like she's not real tech savvy. So I'm like, well, maybe she messed up, but that was actually her FaceTiming me. And so I clicked the link, and it ended up being someone trying to like scam me. And I had 2-factor authentication stuff turned on, so I was able to avoid getting too much of an issue with it. I managed to stop it within seconds, and nothing went bad. But it was very sophisticated, right? And that they managed to hack her actual account, get a recording of her from some video, and use it like it was a FaceTime. And it was very convincing, right? And that's the kind of stuff that they kind of grew to do over time, right? They'd have these relatively reasonable screen recordings, to fake tickets, screenshots and stuff, where if you were a casual fan, that you would look at it and go, well, they sent me a recording of the screen, and it looked real, but whatever, you could sort of, you could choose to be fooled by it. Now, what I kind of learned is that there was a lot of great resources out there to help you, the fan, make sure you weren't being scammed, right? So I always send people to the Swifties Want Ticks Discord. They have a whole channel dedicated to it. Most of the Facebook groups that I belong to for some of the concerts that were like the more reputable groups, all of them had a check ticket proof channel where you could post your ticket proof. So I realized that there were plenty of ways to check, because there were a couple of times that I thought about buying a ticket from someone because it was like a friend of a friend on Facebook. And every single time it turned out that that friend of a friend had been hacked and their account wasn't real, and it was all fake tickets. But yeah, like I learned to use those assets to check my own proof. And but I guess if I hadn't been tech savvy enough to realize that I needed to verify that, there was 1 or 2 times where I was like ready to send someone hundreds of dollars to be like, I'm going to buy these tickets. And then I thought to myself, this does feel too good to be true. Let's check, and then it became like, I have to go find the friend who this person is the friend of a friend of, to see, do you know this person? And has their account been hacked? And every time it was, oh yeah, they got hacked last year. Like, So the sophistication level of the hackers grew for sure, but the ability for you as a fan to have outlets to check your proof and to do all the things you should do also increased. Where if you did the work before you sent off hundreds of dollars to some random person on the internet, then you weren't going to get caught. But yeah, I do think people have some accountability for it, because there were tools and methods and channels and things for them to check. They chose not to, or the scammer was just really, really good. But also some people, were betrayed by longtime friends and family. I heard those stories too, right? People who made a deal with someone they'd been friends with for 20 years, and that person essentially backed out on the deal and took a ticket they thought they had or whatever and resold it to make money. I mean, people are sometimes terrible people, right? So like, sometimes someone sees those dollar signs and they go, I have this ticket, I can sell it for $4,000. Let's do it, right? So I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. I see people in the comments with all kinds of horror stories about this.
But Dan, could you maybe tell me if I'm being too black and white here, but wouldn't the simple thing be just Ticketmaster, StubHub, or a site like StubHub? I keep saying StubHub, but you know what I mean? Like there's like ones where there's the 100% fan.
Where they have guarantees and stuff.
So
Yeah, I mean,
why, I guess, or
cost.
even if friends that had to, if I couldn't go to a concert, I would then probably put the ticket on StubHub and then try to sell it. So
no, I hear you, Trevor. It's just it's a cost thing, right? I mean, because when people come to you and they go, "I got tickets for $400 each or $500 each," right? That should feel too good to be true to you because you know, like intellectually, no one should be selling tickets to a random person they don't know for that cost. But when the tickets to the show cost $1,500, $2,000 each, and you need to get 4 tickets for your family, you're talking the difference between spending $1,500 versus $6,000. That's a huge difference, right? So that's what it comes down to. It's cost, right? And this is it's a uniquely tailored thing at the moment, right? Like there's no other artist who demands this kind of money for the resale market. So that's the thing. It's like you can say in a perfect world, sure, just buy from StubHub and Ticketmaster. But for some people, that means that either A, I've got to win the Ticketmaster war that I may not be able to win if I can't even get in the queue, or B, I can't afford StubHub prices. Like, so yes, like is it better? Sure, right? But if you can't afford to spend $6,000 to take your family of 4 to go see the show, or $3,000 to take you and your kid or whatever, versus maybe you can afford $600, $800 that you think maybe this person is going to sell you 2 tickets for. That's why people are doing it, right? So that's where I think it's not black and white, because the cost is it's a uniquely tailored problem. Like this morning, one of my buddies was like, "Hey, are you going to like keep doing this for other artists?" And I'm like, I don't know that I care enough to do what I'm doing for any other artist, but I went and looked to see like what does a Coldplay ticket cost, or what does a Ed Sheeran ticket cost, or what does an Olivia, and all of them, like even on StubHub, you can get a ticket for a couple $100, right? None of them are tailored. It's a uniquely tailored problem. So,
and to be fair to people in the comments, there are someone that said that they got scammed on StubHub. So I don't want to say I know 100% that people haven't got scammed on StubHub. I'm just going by that it does say that there's a 100% fan guarantee. I know that I had a problem once. I took my mom to see a Rod Stewart concert, and there was a problem with the seat not being available last minute. But right away, StubHub gave me a better seat. They were very calm. It was very smooth process. So that's why I feel personally confident with StubHub. But I guess, so I don't want to speak against your experience, Liv, on that. But from my experience, I feel confident in sites like StubHub. But I guess I was just worried about these fans that are getting scammed from other sources other than Ticketmaster and StubHub, why they were doing that necessarily thing. But I appreciate, Dan, you sort of giving me that breakdown. To sort of wrap up on this, because I don't want to keep you, is what do you think is why do you think Taylor Swift is as big as she is? Like, she's a pop star. She writes her own songs. I love a lot of her songs, most of her songs. But why? What's different about Taylor? There's the debate of Taylor versus Beyonce, Taylor versus all these other artists. What is going on with Taylor Swift that is making everyone so Swiftie for her?
It's a great question. I think she's developed a very parasocial relationship with her fans over the years, in the way that she's been giving and generous with her time, and done a lot of things to show that she's a celebrity who has generally done good things with her celebrity, right? With her fame. She's not one who's generally been a bad or a lousy person. She's been a good person. She does good things for the communities that she interacts with, whether it's her fans, whether it's giving food back to the food banks in every city that she went to, giving her team on the tour massive bonuses. Like, she's someone you want to root for, right? First off, like, I've always found her to be someone that, like, I would love it if my kids said, I want to be like Taylor Swift. Like, she's a celebrity that I go like, yeah, like, that's the kind of person that I want you to like strive to be in your life. Obviously, musically, she makes great music. She writes a great hook. She's been doing it for 2 decades, and she's got all kinds of fans across multiple different genres. of music, right? Whether it's country music from the start, whether it's rock, whether it's pop, whether it's folk. She's shown the ability to be an incredible creator in a variety of forms. And like I said earlier, tell stories through music, regardless of the medium of the music. And it's relatable. And a lot of people have grown up with her. And I think you now have, like I talk about in my own family, people who grew up with Taylor, whose kids are, Swifties, right? You have, I see some of the comments of the Easter eggs, right? Like she's created this parasocial relationship where like she leans into it. She wants her fans to like play the game with her. And we like doing that, right? We like to figure out, oh, what's she doing next? And she likes to hint. So it creates this like feedback loop of, so I just think she's a brilliant businesswoman. She's a brilliant lyricist. She can put on a show like nobody else. And she's figured out a way to keep the investment in the fandom in a way that we love passing down to our kids, that we love sharing with our friends, to try and convince them that like they're missing out if they're not part of this. Because as you talked about before, what a wonderful community it is, right? And like we see it from the inside and we go, why doesn't everyone want to be part of this community? And I've seen some funny videos on TikTok recently, like Tommy Garino. He's a comedian from Boston, right? He went to his first show in Toronto, and all of his recent videos about him becoming a Swiftie. And this guy's got the full Boston accent. He did the videos he used to do where he was in the deli, like hilarious dude. I'm like, and now he's like the most unlikely Swiftie, and I love watching it. And I see people in towns who are talking about what it's like people like you who see the Swifties come in and just. And we see that from the inside. We go, yeah, everyone come in the big tent, come in the party, because it feels really good in here. So, but yeah, then the problem is then she goes on tour and then you have 18 bajillion people who want to go see her and only 10 million seats. I think I read 10 million was the total number of people who got to go to the Eras tour roughly. So, there's a lot more than 10 million Swifties.
I'm scared to ask you this question, but do you think people will ever turn on on Taylor Swift? Like, for example, what's happening to Drake, Aubrey Graham right now. Drake was Canada's biggest export, and nothing Drake did, people said bad about Drake. And he was the guy, he was Mr. Aubrey Graham, the guy from Degrassi High. And you're seeing what's happening now with him versus Kendrick Lamar to like, fast forward to next summer. I don't know if you know this, if you're a hip hop fan or not. Kendrick Lamar is coming to Toronto to do back-to-back concerts in Skydome in Toronto because Drake has never did Skydome before. So long story short, people are in Canada, in Toronto, are turning on Drake. Do you think something like as big as Taylor Swift, does every artist sort of had that peak where eventually someone's going to fall off the rocker, for lack of better words?
It happened before, right? I mean, the whole rep era, right? Like it happened already. We had the Taylor Swift is over party trending and all that, and she went and hid for a while, and so it's happened before. I can't imagine what the event would be that would flip the fandom on her again. But I guess you never know, right? But yeah, it's happened before. I mean, she was the biggest thing in the world after 1989, and then the world turned on her. And if you ever watch the Miss Americana documentary, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if you haven't, you should, because it's a fascinating perspective on kind of what she was going through in that time, and to, like the rap era and a little more beyond that. But like, it's a really interesting perspective into what she went through and how she kind of pushed through that and, reclaimed the throne or whatever that she had in the 1989 era. So could it happen again? I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Like if she did something completely unexpected, I see someone in the comments saying if she came out and supported Trump, I suppose if she completely changed her personality and, did something like that, yeah, it would alienate people for sure. But I think at this point we all kind of know who she is. She hasn't really pulled punches of sharing who she is as a person. We've seen a lot behind the scenes. I imagine maybe we'll get an Eras Tour doc and we'll see even more, at least of what she's chosen to share with us. And I think if she's that person and she stays that person, I don't know where people flip on her again. I mean, you never say never, but it would take a lot for me as a 20-year Swiftie to ever be like, I'm not interested in what Taylor Swift is doing, musically and creatively, because I think she's a brilliant artist, and I'm lucky to live at the same time as someone I think is that talented and that creative, that I get to consume her art and make that part of my life story.
Dan, you're a busy guy. I don't want to keep you. I have one last question for you. Guys, if you are just joining us, double tap the screen, share the live. If you're new to my live, please take a quick moment to give my account a follow. We have 103 people watching right now. Can all 103 of you double tap the screen, give my account a follow, make sure you give Dan a follow. I guarantee you 99% of you are already following Dan already, but make sure you take a quick moment to make sure you're following both of our accounts. Dan, I want to give you the last word about the Girl Guide cookies. Tell us when we were talking about the Girl Guide cookies earlier, someone wanted to know how they can buy the Girl Guide cookies from you, how they can transfer money to you. So you were kind enough to give me so much of your time today. I want to sell all 2,000 of those Girl Guide cookies.
I appreciate it. Yes, that's like the next big thing I'll be attempting to do with my platform here, is helping my daughter sell Girl Scout cookies. Nora's a big scout. She wants to sell 2,000 boxes this year. The season doesn't start till January, so sometime I'm thinking about mid-January. Hopefully they don't shut TikTok off in the US. If they do, it'll be on some other social media platform that I'll explain to you guys where that is. But around the time of when TikTok might go away in the US is the start of cookie season. It lasts about 2 months. Once it starts, I'll have links in my bio. We'll have tons of videos. You'll be able to donate online on her cookie purchasing page. So I'll have out all the details for that. If you want to actually get cookies and you don't live in the US, you can DM me and I could get some and then privately ship them to you. Shipping, of course, would be figured out. But if you live in the US, you can order on her website, no problem. And they ship anywhere in the US directly from Girl Scouts. But if you're not in the US, I think you either have to donate or just do private. But I heard in Canada, the Girl Guides only sell 3 flavors. We have 9 flavors.
Whoa. Slow down.
We got 9 flavors in the US, the Girl Scouts.
I think that's the best answer you've given us the whole interview here. What? Slow down.
I heard there's only 3 flavors up there.
We have the chocolate, vanilla, and I can't think of the third one, but
you get the mints. Probably.
The mint. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. So this is Nora's favorite. These are adventurefuls. These ones are like a chocolate caramel thing. We have peanut butter patties, peanut butter sandwiches. We got caramel delights.
Why didn't you bring Girl Guide cookies over the border when you were in Toronto?
It's not cookie season.
But you have some you got some there. You got some hidden.
Yeah, well, these are left. This is an empty box from last year. I saved a box or two, but there's no cookies left. We ate all the cookies. They're good. But yeah, we have 6 more flavors than you guys do up there apparently. So apparently Canada, you guys need some. You need to get all the flavors of cookies, not just the 3 you have. So.
Well, again, Dan, I want to say this to hopefully motivate others here. I'm Canadian. You've confirmed, unfortunately, you can't ship the ones that you're selling for your daughter to Canada. But I would like to.
Not through Scouts. I mean, I'll do it privately if someone really needs it.
No, but so basically, I want to start off by donating $50. I will email transfer you to $50, and I want you to buy random people that you think see fit to those cookies. Okay. But I hope other people that are watching this interview, especially to the Canadians here, that you all donate money to Dan to sell some cookies, but then to give them out to some other people that need it.
Well, I'll be excited to tell Nora that she sold her first 10 boxes of cookies already today. So,
well, again, Dan, I appreciate all the time you gave me today. I appreciate, I'm not speaking for all of Taylor Swift fans by any means, but I mean, for me, watching your content was so entertaining to me. You were so helpful, even just as a content creator to content creator. I look at you as a secret mentor to me. I've been watching your lives and how you handle dealing with a lot of people. Because I don't know if you've seen any of my morning broadcasts, but I do a morning sunrise broadcast over Lake Ontario.
I've stopped in a couple of them. Yeah,
I've had anywhere from 100 to 500 people watching, and then they ask me the same questions. Oh, is that Lake Ontario? Where are you? And I'm not anywhere to the level that you're level. So just watching you deal with the Swifties, I've been learning a lot from you secretly. So I just want to thank you for all that you were doing for Taylor Swift fans. Thanking you for, just giving your time to me. You're awesome. I just think you're a great content creator. I think what you're doing is awesome. Someone just said you're extremely friendly. During this whole interview, everyone's just been saying nothing but positive comments. I haven't, normally when I go live, there's always someone that's trolling. I didn't see any trolling comments during this live whatsoever.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. I felt mostly the same way too. Occasionally I'll get one or two random ones when I'm live or when I'm in my videos, but the amount of positivity has been generally really nice. And again, this speaks to the Swiftie community, but I think when you stay within Swift Talk, it's pretty nice. Sometimes you do things on TikTok that get out of Swift Talk into the general population, and that's what always when it gets weird. But if you stay in the Swiftie part of the population, it's really a good place to be.
One question I'm sorry I skipped over is, did anyone from the Taylor Swift camp reach out to you? Anyone? Whether it be close-knit or even like a friend of a friend or a fan club of a fan club. Like, do you think the circle of Taylor Swift or even Miss Taylor Swift herself, do you think they're aware of you, Dan?
The closest I got would have been Jameson, right? Who is literally catering for Taylor, and he knows Taylor. I know he asked Andrea if Milo and I could go backstage that night, and apparently it was a busy night and Taylor was leaving early, I guess, right after the show or something, and it wasn't possible. But so I guess maybe, but no, I had not heard officially from anyone. I always say I would love for my page to someday get a visit from the Taylor Fairy, like Taylor Nation or whatever. Just pop in with a like or a comment one time on one of my videos. I think I've done a lot of fun videos that are like Taylor related, and I keep hoping maybe someday they'll give me a like or something. But no, I've not heard anything officially ever from Taylor Nation, or whatever. But Jameson was obviously pretty close to home, like literally the guy who's cooking her food backstage while she's at Rogers. So that was close, I guess. But
wow. Well, thank you, Dan, for your time. I'm sorry for keeping you longer than I thought I would keep you, but
my pleasure to it was a good chat. And love, I'm happy to talk about this stuff. It's a good way to kind of unpack from whatever the last 2 years were as we move into whatever the next chapter is going to be, which is really unknown right now. And it's a strange place to be as someone who's spent so much of their time and energy focused on this thing for such a long time. And now you go like, what's next? What are we doing? What are we all doing here? Right. But
do you feel an extra sense of responsibility when you post any content other than Swiftie content because you have such positive TikTok Taylor Swift fans in your lives? I'm not to your level of content creation, and I don't have as many followers as you do. I have like 5,000 followers. But every time I make a post that's not related to Taylor Swift, I'm always careful about what I post because I do appreciate the support that I've been getting from Swifties, and they've been so positive,
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and it's something that I do struggle with a little bit, right? Because I think before all of this more recent time, my content was a little more varied, right? And then it became very much one thing for the better part of the last couple of months. But before that, I would have posts talking about local politics. Like I'm pretty active in my local politics scene in the town that I live in. I'd have posts talking about different, Philly sports, like I talk about, and Stephen King sometimes, like just all kinds of different stuff. It was a little more of a variety of content. Where Taylor was kind of the uniting thread, but like it wasn't all Taylor, and it certainly wasn't all Taylor ticket specifically. So yeah, I do wonder, right? Like what's going to happen as I get back into that variety space a little bit. Like, do I just make this channel just Taylor stuff, and do I start like a second channel for like Dan's other thoughts? So I don't know, and some of that may be affected by what happens with TikTok in the US, because I don't want to like make too much effort to start moving my audience around. Then it turns out we have to get off TikTok in 2 months anyway, or a month and a half, if that really does happen. So I don't know, but it's a really good point, and I'm kind of curious as we move into the next couple months, and suddenly I'm not going to get 50,000 views in everything I post because they're not going to be of interest to that many people. What happens? What happens when I start talking about? But so I guess as someone who loves data and loves doing experiments, I guess I'm gonna find out, and then I'll probably play with what happens and look at the data and kind of see like what were people responsive to, receptive to. Because a lot of what I do with the ticket stuff kind of grew out of the fact that people were really interested in this when I made a couple random videos about it. The first video that got a lot of attention to this was a random video I did in my car while my son was at soccer practice. That was just talking about like when they might do stage drops in different towns. And it got like 130,000 views. I was like, huh, well, that's interesting. Like I didn't think that was that interesting of a topic. It was literally a video I did with terrible lighting in the car at soccer practice. And I remember shooting that video and the sun was like in a terrible spot. Like, where the hell do I hold my camera so the entire screen is not just like a ball of, glare? Like, I guess you doing sunrise lives probably have that problem. But like, where do I, and it was the crappiest video, low effort, literally recorded it. I think I even like privated it briefly because I wasn't sure I was 100% right about it. So I was like, you know what? Like, I can course correct that thing about indie if I'm wrong about it. And I was wrong about it. It was about because there was a convention in there before. But anyway, it was like the lowest effort video and it got all these views. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe this is something that it's really interesting and could help people because it's good. But, one thing that was mentioned in the comments of the retrospective post I did yesterday that it really has been sticking with me was that like up until Miami Eras Tour shows, most of my content as it related to the Eras Tour was basically me bitching about not getting to the Eras Tour, right? And then it kind of pivoted, and it was a lot of like, woe is me, like I wish I could go. And some of it I thought was like funny or interesting, like I did like relatable stuff, right? But when I pivoted from, woe is me, I didn't get this, hey, make my video viral for no apparent reason so I can go to the Eras Tour, then I pivoted to, I'm going to help people. And I'm not going to help people with any promise in mind. I'm just going to help people because I have information that's helpful. All of a sudden, it went from like, I've got 1 million, I have no views to 1 million views. And it wasn't, and it was just because I pivoted my content from woe is me, this sucks. And it was relatable, I guess, to, hey, let's be helpful. Let's be a force for positivity. And that's what kind of took my channel from, I wouldn't say obscurity. I had 10,000 followers before all this, but like from relative obscurity to being obviously like a Swiftie ticket world celebrity. So, but I didn't really think about that till that comment, but that flip from self-centered, me-focused content to other-focused content was what really pushed things from my channel in a different direction in a way that obviously ended up being very beneficial and played itself back, right? And that, now I did get to go to the shows because of the fact that I was helping people, not because I beat Ticketmaster, but because I was helping people. So I don't know. That was one thing I thought has been really sticking with me since someone made that comment the other day of like, boy, they're really right. I went from being self-centered to being other focused, and look what happened. So I don't know. Interesting lesson to learn, I guess, is that it sometimes is, it's fun to make content that's like relatable and like whatever, but if it's just you basically bitching the whole time about you not getting something, it's not that interesting.
Mm-hmm. I just think everything you've been doing the past month or so that I kind of came across you've been nothing but awesome. And again, just dealing with, again, any person that has worked in retail or customer service or a situation where you get the same question over and over and over, like, I think people would appreciate how you were able to handle me just being in your live for even 5-10 minutes and seeing some of the same questions, you answering it, and you just not skipping a beat, you killing everyone with kindness. You were being very patient. I don't think I ever saw you ever get upset or frustrated or anything, even though maybe deep down you might have been annoyed by the repetitiveness, but you were handling everything so well, so calm, as cool as a cucumber.
Yeah, well, if you're going to be a creator on TikTok, you have to really accept that context is not known by everyone. And if you don't keep context in mind when you're creating, whether it's a live, whether it's a video or whatever, and that you're going to get those questions. And sometimes it's intentional, right? I don't do that much of it, but a lot of people intentionally context bait, right? They put out content and they go like, I'm not going to give enough context. and then I'm going to get a million engagement comments because people are like, what the F are you talking about? Because you haven't given the right context. And then sometimes, you're going to give not enough context to be misunderstood. Like there's a video that I did. This is after the Crying Like a Kelsey video, right? And the Crying Like a Kelsey video I did was talking about Travis going on stage and how that was such a cool experience and how it made me like, gave me feelings of like inclusion because I saw Travis going out there doing something that was out of his comfort zone. In the comments, there was a couple people, not that many, but a few, who were like, it's all just the people who are like, it's all PR relationship, right? Taylor and Travis is a PR relationship and it's not real, right? And I made a video that was showing the shot when Travis was in London and Taylor was singing Lover and Kylie is behind him and Kylie is looking from Travis to Taylor, and Travis to Taylor, Travis to Taylor, and like just looking and watching her, her brother-in-law fall in love with this woman for the whole world to see. And in the context in the video, I just said, well, then give these people an Oscar or something like that. And most people got it, that I was sort of saying, that it was a sarcastic comment, right? That I didn't mean that they were actually acting. But then there was tons of comments on the video going like, oh, you're such a jerk. Of course they're not actors. And I'm like, well, no, I mean, but again, if you only got the 5-second long clip without the context of the previous video and you didn't know who I was, then that was a valid interpretation you could have watching that, and like that's TikTok. That's TikTok for you, right? It's like most people will get it, some people won't, but if you don't realize that context is a problem on TikTok as a creator, then you are going to struggle. Or you bait into it, right? Or you bait it, because TikTok is great about letting you context bait to get engagement. I try not to do that. I find it annoying when it happens to me as a consumer. I hate it. So I try not to do it on the other end. But I'm sure there's times where I do. People probably come in like, who is this guy popping up talking about tickets? And why is he always showing U.S. prices? I live in Canada. Stop showing U.S. prices. Again, I don't explain on every single video that I always do USD, no fees. But does it get me engagement? I guess. Did I want the engagement? No, I didn't really want that kind of engagement. But, at the same time, I can't explain myself every which way, every video. That's TikTok. But again, as a creator on TikTok, you have to think about that constantly.
Dan, I appreciate all the time you gave me today. You're awesome. I hope we stay in touch. I hope you come to Toronto again. If you come to Toronto again, I will buy you, your daughter, your son, your wife tickets to go to a Blue Jay game. I'm sorry to your team and my team that we didn't get a certain player today. The Mets gone.
I walked downstairs this morning. My son goes, "Dad, we're screwed." I'm like, "Yeah, you're talking about soda?" He's like, "Yeah, he's in the Mets." I'm like, "I saw, buddy. I saw." Literally, first thing he says to me this morning. It wasn't even a good morning. It's, "Dad, we're screwed."
Yeah. But it would be my honor if you guys come to Toronto. Let me buy you guys baseball tickets. I would love to meet you. My girlfriend and I would love to host you guys, show you a baseball game.
Awesome.
It'd be fun.
It'd be awesome. Yeah. Hopefully we'll get back up there. I'd like to be there for more than 20 hours at some point. That was a very short trip. But it is a great town. So that's what, when we had to pick a city to go to on the last leg of the tour, we said, well, which out of the towns we could go to, which one we want to go to? We all said, let's go to Toronto. So, that was why we focused on Toronto, because it was the one town out of the options that we said was the most fun. So,
but we'll keep in touch, and I owe you $50, and I will buy those cookies, and let's keep in touch. But I appreciate everything you do, and thank you for putting even a bit of a spotlight on my content and sharing some of my videos. And my biggest, most popular video on TikTok is me just happening to catch the entourage of cars of Taylor Swift when they arrived. We don't even know what car she was in, but I just happened to see the 4 cars as I was arriving to Skydome around 3:30. I saw the parade of cars, and I caught it. We posted on TikTok.
The Queen's arrival. Yes, absolutely.
Right. Can we say that, by the way? The taxpayers did not pay for that. I'm pretty sure the promoters or the crew paid for that. And even if we did, how much money Taylor Swift brought into Toronto and Canada, the least we could do is make sure she gets to the venue safe. Like, come on.
Yeah, she random story, but I was at one of my son's soccer games, and I was sitting next to a woman who saw my bracelets, and I was wearing a Taylor shirt, and we got to chatting about Taylor. And it turns out that she had known someone who, she was friends with someone on Charlie XCX's team, and she had gone to the Rep Stadium tour in Philly. and she was backstage because she like knew people, and she had dinner with Taylor's security team before the show. And the stuff, I mean, I don't want to repeat all of it because honestly, some of it I can't even find like on the internet because I don't want to like give away secrets. But she has a lot of a security team, and she does a lot to make sure that she is safe because obviously she's not. You know, if she does, so she is investing in her own security in a very high level. I'm sure that she was part of whatever decisions were made, and her security team was part of whatever decisions were made about getting her safely from place to place. And I'm sure that like they were, involved in paying for it too, because she needs an abnormal level of security, but she makes sure that she has it, and that's good. Like she should. So you can't be that kind of celebrity and not have that.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate your time today, Dan. We'll keep in touch, and we will set up the logistics of paying you $50.
I appreciate it. I look forward to telling my daughter today that she saw Girl Scout cookies while she was at school.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks very much for your time, Dan. You're awesome.
Right. Thanks, Trevor.
Bye.